I want you to imagine being afraid in your own home. Not because of burglars or storms, but because of the woman who lives right next door. The woman who bangs on your wall at 7 in the morning. The woman who leaves angry notes taped to your door. The woman whose face twists with rage every time she sees you. That was 17-year-old Maya's reality. But before you label this woman as cruel, before you decide she's just another bitter person, making life miserable for others, let me tell you something. Sometimes the angriest people are fighting battles you can't see. Please, before we go deeper into this story, do me a favor. Hit that like button so stories like this can reach people who need to hear them. And if you're new here, subscribe. What happens next will stay with you long after this video ends. Now, let me tell you about Maya. Maya was an artist. Not the kind who sold paintings in galleries, but the kind who saw beauty in ordinary things. She'd just moved into her first apartment, a small studio on the 3rd floor of an old building. It wasn't much, but it was hers. She'd saved for 2 years, working part-time jobs to afford it. Her walls were covered with her drawings. Her windowsill held plants she'd rescued from discount bins. This place was her sanctuary, her fresh start after a difficult childhood in foster care. Right next door lived a woman everyone called the Fury. Her real name was Mrs. Patterson, but nobody used it. She was in her early 60s, with silver hair pulled back, so tight it looked painful, and eyes that seemed to burn through whatever they looked at. She'd lived in that building for 20 years, and in those 20 years, she'd driven out 12 neighbors from the apartment next to hers. 12. The building manager had actually warned Maya. Listen, I have to be honest with you. Mrs. Patterson is difficult. Very difficult. But this is all I have available in your price range, and I promise if it gets unbearable, we'll figure something out. Maya needed the apartment. She had nowhere else to go. So she moved in. The first complaint came on day 2. Maya was unpacking boxes, playing soft music from her phone, when suddenly, bang, 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 the wall shook. She jumped, nearly dropping the frame she was holding. Then came the shouting through the wall. Turn that noise off. Some people are trying to live in peace. Maya quickly turned the music off, her hands trembling. It hadn't even been loud. She checked. The second complaint came that same evening. Maya was making dinner, just stirring pasta, when the banging started again. This time, Mrs. Patterson came to her door. Maya opened it to find the woman's face red with fury. Do you have any idea how much noise you're making? Banging pots around like you're in a restaurant kitchen. I'm sorry, I was just cooking. I don't care what you were doing. Keep it quiet or I'll report you to the landlord. The door slammed before Maya could respond. And it continued. Day 3, complaint about footsteps. Stop stomping around like an elephant. Day 5, complaint about her alarm clock. I can't hear that beeping through the wall. Day 7, complaint about her taking a shower. Do you know what time it is? 7 in the morning is too early for all that water running. Maya started walking on tiptoes in her own home. She set her alarm to vibrate. She took showers at odd hours, trying to find a time that wouldn't upset Mrs. Patterson. She stopped cooking meals that required pots and pans. She stopped playing music entirely. She stopped inviting her only friend over because she was terrified of the complaints. She was living like a ghost in her own apartment. Other neighbors noticed but stayed silent. The man across the hall just shrugged when Maya asked if he ever had problems. I learned to ignore her years ago. She's been like that forever. Just stay out of her way. But Maya couldn't stay out of her way. They shared a wall. Every sound, every breath, every movement seemed to trigger rage. Then came the notes. Maya would come home from her job at the cafe to find notes taped to her door. Your footsteps are unacceptable. I heard you laughing on the phone last night. Show some respect. If you can't live quietly, move somewhere else. Maya stopped sleeping well. She'd wake up multiple times a night, afraid she'd made some noise in her sleep that would trigger another outburst. Dark circles formed under her eyes. Her hands shook when she unlocked her door, never knowing if there'd be another note waiting. Her friend Jenna noticed. Maya, this isn't normal. You can't live like this. Report her. But Maya had learned early in life that authority figures didn't always help. I'll figure it out, she whispered. She started observing Mrs. Patterson the way she observed subjects for her drawings. Small details, patterns, things other people missed. She noticed that Mrs. Patterson left her apartment every Tuesday at exactly 2 in the afternoon, carrying a small bag. She noticed that Mrs. Patterson's hands trembled when she held her keys. She noticed that sometimes, late at night, she could hear something through the wall. Not anger, not shouting, something else. Crying. Soft, broken crying that would last for hours. Maya didn't know what to make of it. How could someone so angry be so sad? Then came the day everything changed. It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon. Maya had the day off and was sitting by her window, sketching. She happened to look down at the street and saw Mrs. Patterson leaving the building with her usual Tuesday bag. Something made Maya grab her jacket and follow her. Not to confront her, not to spy exactly, but to understand. Mrs. Patterson walked 6 blocks through the rain, never once opening an umbrella despite getting soaked. She walked like she didn't notice the weather, didn't notice the cars, didn't notice anything. She stopped at a cemetery. Maya stayed back, hidden behind a large monument, watching. Mrs. Patterson walked to a grave and collapsed in front of it. Not sat down. Collapsed. Like her legs just gave out. She pressed her hands against the wet grass and sobbed. Deep, wrenching sobs that shook her entire body. Maya couldn't hear what she was saying, but she saw Mrs. Patterson pull something from her bag. A small stuffed bear. She placed it against the headstone, arranging it carefully like it was the most precious thing in the world. Maya felt something crack open in her chest. She waited until Mrs. Patterson left, then walked to the grave. The headstone read, Emma Patterson, age 7, forever in our hearts, 2020 to 2027. Below that, in smaller letters, taken too soon. Mommy will never stop loving you. Maya's hand flew to her mouth. Everything made sense. The rage at any sound of life, because her daughter's life had been silenced. The anger at laughter because her own joy had died. The complaints about footsteps because she'd never hear her daughter's footsteps again. The Tuesday visits. The late night crying. The fury wasn't cruelty. It was grief wearing armor. Maya stood in the rain, tears mixing with the drops on her face. She thought about her own losses, her own years of anger after being abandoned by her parents. How she'd pushed people away because it hurt less than letting them close. She understood. The next day, Maya did something that everyone told her was crazy. She bought fresh flowers and a small canvas. She spent hours painting something simple but beautiful. A little girl with curly hair, holding a teddy bear, surrounded by butterflies. That evening, she left both items outside Mrs. Patterson's door with a note. I'm sorry for your loss. I understand pain. If you ever want to talk, I'm right here. Maya. She didn't expect a response. But the next morning, when she opened her door to leave for work, she found something on her doorstep. A cup of tea, still warm, and a note. Thank you. I'm sorry for how I've treated you. That was all. But it was everything. The complaints stopped. Not immediately, not all at once, but gradually. The wall banging faded. The angry notes disappeared. A week later, Maya heard a soft knock on her door. When she opened it, Mrs. Patterson stood there, looking smaller somehow. Fragile. I saw you at the cemetery, she said quietly. Following me. Maya's heart stopped. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to intrude, I just... Thank you for the painting, Mrs. Patterson interrupted. It looks like her. I don't know how you knew, but it looks exactly like my Emma. She paused, tears forming. She loved butterflies. Maya invited her in. They sat together, 2 broken people in a small apartment, and Mrs. Patterson told her everything. How Emma had died in a car accident 3 years ago. How her husband had left her 6 months later, unable to handle the grief. How she'd pushed away every friend, every family member, everyone who tried to help. How she'd been so consumed by anger at the unfairness of it all that she'd become the thing she hated most. Bitter. Alone. Cruel. Every sound reminds me that life is continuing without her, she whispered. Every laugh, every footstep, every tiny noise. And I wanted it all to stop. I wanted the world to be as silent as her grave. Maya took her hand. I lost my parents when I was 6. Different situation. But I know what it's like to feel like you're drowning in grief. I know what it's like to be angry at people for just living their lives when yours fell apart. They cried together that afternoon. From that day forward, everything transformed. Mrs. Patterson started knocking on Maya's door, but not to complain, to check on her, to bring her soup when she was sick, to ask about her art. Maya started having dinner with Mrs. Patterson every Thursday. They'd cook together, the sounds of life filling both apartments. Mrs. Patterson taught Maya her grandmother's recipes. Maya taught Mrs. Patterson how to draw. The other neighbors watched in absolute disbelief. The woman who terrorized the building for 3 years was laughing, smiling, helping someone carry groceries up the stairs, apologizing to people she'd yelled at years ago. One evening, as they sat on Maya's tiny balcony watching the sunset, Mrs. Patterson spoke. "You saved my life, you know." "No," Maya said softly. "You saved mine too. I was so alone before this." "Why didn't you fight back?" Mrs. Patterson asked. "Why didn't you yell at me, report me, hate me?" Maya thought about it. "Because my foster mom once told me that hurt people, and healed people heal people. I figured you were hurting. I just didn't know how much." Mrs. Patterson wiped her eyes. "Emma would have loved you." Months passed. The seasons changed. And then one spring morning, Mrs. Patterson knocked on Maya's door, holding a small box. "I want you to have something," she said. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with a butterfly charm. "It was Emma's," Mrs. Patterson explained. "She wore it every day. I've been holding on to it, keeping it locked away like if I kept her things hidden, the pain would be less. But I realize now that Emma wouldn't want her things collecting dust. She'd want them to mean something again." She clasped it around Maya's wrist. "You reminded me how to live, how to let light back in. That's what Emma would have wanted for me. And I think she'd want you to have this, because in a way, you're the daughter who helped me find my way back." Maya couldn't speak. She just hugged her. That summer, Maya organized an art show in the building's community room. She displayed her paintings, including one special piece, a portrait of Mrs. Patterson and Emma, recreated from an old photo, surrounded by butterflies. Mrs. Patterson stood in front of it for a long time, then turned to the small crowd. 3 years ago, I lost my daughter. And I lost myself. I became someone I'm ashamed of. I hurt people. I pushed away anyone who tried to care. But this young woman, this beautiful soul who I treated terribly, she saw past my anger. She saw my pain. And she didn't run. She stayed. She cared. And she taught me that grief doesn't have to turn us into monsters. It can turn us into something better, something kinder." She looked at Maya. "You were the answered prayer I didn't know I was praying for." The room erupted in applause. From that day on, Mrs. Patterson became known not as the Fury, but as Miss P, the lady who gives the best hugs. She started volunteering at a children's hospital, reading stories to sick kids. She opened her home for building gatherings. She became the grandmother figure for every young person in that building. And Maya, she finally felt like she had a home. Not just an apartment, but a real home with someone who loved her like family. All because she chose compassion over judgment. All because she looked past the anger and saw the grief. All because she understood that sometimes the people who push the hardest are the ones holding on by the thinnest thread. And sometimes all it takes is one person who refuses to give up on them. One person who says, "I see you. I see your pain. And I'm not leaving." That's the power of kindness. That's the power of staying.